Darkness doesn't always come at night. Sometimes it slips in quietly through a cracked screen, the sound of a door closing too softly, an empty bed still warm. The absence of small footsteps echo louder than any scream. Sometimes it finds the young and trusting and pulls them into something far too dark. Tonight, we follow those fragile threads, quiet escapes, distant placements, innocence swept into the darkness far too vast. This episode includes child homicide, sexual assault, dismemberment, and the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples crisis. Listener discretion is strongly advised. If you're new here, welcome to Chasing the Dark. We're here for truth, remembrance, and refusing to let these names fade. If you haven't already, please follow and leave a rating and a review. Thank you to my Patreon supporters for helping keep the darkness alive. A special shout out to Whitney. Because of your request, this story rises from the darkness. Now, close your eyes, let the room settle, and follow my voice into the dark. Her name was Emily Pike. The desert doesn't forgive. It doesn't forget. Along the lonely highways of eastern Arizona, the earth stretches dry and unbroken beneath the skies so wide it makes you feel small, like a fragment of dust drifting through eternity. The air is coarse against your skin, scented with creosote and the faint bitterness of baked soil. At night, darkness drapes itself across the land, absolute and heavy, broken only by the occasional headlights slicing through like a knife. Most travelers glance past. Most don't look. Most don't see. But sometimes the desert remembers. Sometimes it holds on to the terrible things humans try to hide. On February 14th, 2025, hikers near a remote stretch of US Highway 60 stumbled upon two black trash bags. At first, they seemed like careless litter, the kind of trash someone tosses aside without a second thought. Yet the desert doesn't lie. Inside those bags lay the body of a 14-year-old girl, Emily Pike. Her life had already been a series of disappearances, of tragedies no child should ever endure. And here in the silence of Gila County, it ended. Violence had stolen her. Questions remained, dark and hollow, and no answers would fill the emptiness left behind. The hikers froze, their hearts pounding. The smell came first, sharp, clinging, and unforgettable. Then the realization, then the instinct to flee. But the mind knows what the eyes cannot unsee. Emily hadn't wandered here on her own. The place of her death was far from where she'd been taken. A journey of hours, of purpose, of unseen hands. Someone had carried her. Someone had left her to vanish into the desert's vast, indifferent memory. The bags were placed with care, a cruel attempt to make a life disappear, to make the world forget she'd ever existed. The desert watched. The desert remembered. Tracks and fibers, faint and scattered, whispered truths to those who knew how to listen. And Emily's story, the darkness of it, was only beginning. She was 14 years old, a girl who had survived unspeakable trauma and yet still kept running, taken from the home she knew, placed in a group home that promised safety, and then vanished into the desert. What happened that night? The answers are layered in shadows, and some may never be found. But before we go further, you must understand this. The night Emily disappeared wasn't the start of the darkness. It was the aftermath. By then, she'd already accused someone of something horrific, been ripped from the only life she'd ever known, and had tried to escape the pain that nearly consumed her. There are parts of her story that never made the headlines, parts that still haunt investigators, and one thought that lingers long and heavy, like smoke in a windless room. Was Emily being protected or moved out of the way? To understand how a 14-year-old girl ended up alone in the desert, we have to go back to the moment everything began to unravel. Before the desert swallowed her story, before her name became another whisper in the long list of missing and murdered Indigenous children, there was a shift, a fracture in her world. Emily Pike was 13 when she spoke words no child should ever speak. She said she'd been sexually assaulted inside the place that should have been safest, her own community on the San Carlos Apache Reservation. She named a horror that investigators later confirmed was inflicted by a relative. Complicated, devastating, hidden from the public eye. When a child says something like that, the world moves, but not always carefully. Tribal social services removed Emily from her home, not for anything she'd done, but because the adults around her believed it was the only way to keep her safe. And just like that, her world disappeared. She was taken more than 100 miles away, placed in a group home in Mesa called Sacred Journey. To Emily, it wasn't protection. It was exile. Imagine being 13. Imagine surviving the unspeakable, and then being told the price of safety is losing everything. Home, family, friends, the only life you'd ever known. By the time she'd arrived at the group home, the weight of it all pressed down on her small shoulders. One night, the storm inside her became unbearable. A shoelace, a doorknob, a cut to her wrist, a desperate silent attempt to stop the pain. It wasn't teenage rebellion. It was survival. Misguided, terrified, broken survival. The staff intervened and she was hospitalized. A quiet medical record buried in a system that moves children like pieces on a board. And when she returned, the shadows came with her. Fear, loss, loneliness, all inescapable. And still, she kept running, not towards danger, but toward home, toward the only place she'd ever truly belonged. Over and over, Emily ran from the group home. Each time she was found wandering canals, streets, and neighborhoods in Mesa. Each time she told the same truth. I just want to see my mom. Not the counselors, not the staff, her mother, her grandmother, her home. The system returned her time and time, through the same doors, into the same unfamiliar walls. And the assault that changed her life? never led to a conviction. The relative accused of harming her remained unnamed. Charges dropped. Case closed, at least on paper. But advocates note something haunting. According to reports, the person accused of hurting Emily was still seen near her home after the allegation, still part of the landscape of her life. Was Emily sent away to protect her, or because the system couldn't confront the one who'd hurt her? This question drifts like a shadow through the case, because when Emily left the reservation, everything changed. A girl once surrounded by family and culture became a frightened teenager in a foreign world, carrying trauma no child should ever bear. And still, she ran toward home, toward the only place that had ever felt like hers. The desert holds its breath. Under a wide, indifferent Arizona sky, the horizon blurs, shimmers, bends. By day it burns in heat waves. By night it swallows light, folding everything into impenetrable darkness. Wind slides over scrub and land, brushing cacti and low hills, carrying whispers only the earth remembers. Out there, things can be hidden, deliberately, meticulously, as if the desert itself had been chosen to shield them. It seems empty. It seems safe. Until it's not. On Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2025, hikers moving along a seldom used trail near marker 277 on US Highway 60 stumbled into the unimaginable. Rocks, scraggly desert shrubs, the scattered remains of human negligence. Bottles, paper wrappers littered the path. At first glance, 2 black trash bags stood out of place, unnatural. One hiker nudged a bag with a boot. It shifted with a hollow sound, echoing across the still desert. The hiker's instinct was to ignore it, common to anyone used to finding trash. It was brief, swallowed quickly by something deeper, a curiosity that wouldn't let go. Inside the black trash bags were human remains. Shock crashed over them, twisting into disbelief and nausea. One hiker threw up in the dust. Another stumbled backwards over rocks as if retreat could outrun the horror. The fragments of a life stolen too soon, wrapped, hidden, yet exposed, lay in plain sight. Deputies from Gila County Sheriff's Office arrived, vehicles crunching over gravel as the night settled around them, their flashlights casting jagged shadows over dirt and brush. The bags were cordoned off. Forensics teams would follow, cataloging every detail, the position of the bags, footprints fading toward a trailhead, displaced sand, broken shrub. Every inch of the desert became a page of evidence. Emily Pike had been missing for weeks, 14 years old, a runaway from a group home in Mesa, Arizona. Her life already marked by instability and vulnerability. The distance from Mesa to this remote desert near Globe was roughly a 2-hour drive. That meant she'd been transported, placed there by someone deliberate, someone cold, someone patient. The desert itself became a witness. Footprints, tire tracks, fibers, fragments of clothing were all recorded in silent testimony. The black bags were positioned with care, tucked enough to avoid casual discovery, yet left where the desert would speak if anyone looked closely. Nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to find. When investigators opened the trash bags, the discovery was shocking. Inside were the dismembered remains of Emily Pike. Investigators noted that dismemberment is rare, but the precision of the cuts told a chilling story. The tools used and the level of control suggested something far more disturbing than a moment of rage. This wasn't impulsive violence. It was calculated. Whoever did this knew the land and knew exactly how to leave just enough behind to be discovered, but never enough to tell the whole story. And in that moment, investigators knew this wasn't just a killing. Someone had gone to great lengths to erase Emily Pike. Emily's last known movements offered faint clues. The intersection of Mesa Drive and McKellips Road was a bustling corridor of gas stations, convenience stores, and apartment complexes. Surveillance cameras captured glimpses, a car lingering, a shadow moving against the flow of ordinary life. But as footage is overwritten and memories fade, evidence disappears, leaving nothing but questions. Even brief encounters could have pulled her closer to danger. For a young girl on the run, a familiar face might have felt safe, but sometimes the people or places that seem the most harmless are the ones that lead you somewhere you never meant to go. By the time she was identified, it was clear this was more than a missing child case. The scene, the care and disposal, the remote desert location, all suggested planning. Someone had done this before, or at least thought carefully enough to make it seem so. The desert waits, but it doesn't forget. Every detail mattered. Every mark, every fragment, every impression of sand and stone might hold the key to understanding what happened to Emily Pike. The first hours after a disappearance are fragile, stretched thin like a trembling wire. Families feel them as panic, investigators as urgency, procedural and precise, but knowing every second can make the difference. For Emily, every moment was magnified by her age, by her vulnerability, by the circumstances that would unfold with deadly consequence. She was last seen along the busy streets of Mesa. Traffic, pedestrians, glances exchanged like invisible threads. Easy to be overlooked, easier to be followed. Investigators review hours of footage. Frame by frame, the cameras tell a quiet, chilling story. A figure moves closer. A hand stretches out. Each small gesture feels loaded with meaning, innocent on the surface, but dangerous underneath. They talked to witnesses, put up flyers, and sent alerts through social media. Anyone who walked the corridor was questioned. Any strange behavior was recorded, but trying to isolate a single predatory movement was nearly impossible. Behavioral analysis became essential. Investigators tried to imagine who might have targeted Emily. Could it be a stranger, patient and lurking, offering help only to seize control in an instant? Or someone she knew, watching her patterns and waiting for the perfect opportunity? Could it be the unnamed man who'd already hurt her? The one she'd spoken about? Maybe he was seeking revenge because she'd spoken about what he'd done to her. Maybe it was a local, someone familiar with the terrain. The desert disposal site suggested a person who moved between Mesa and Globe, someone who knew all the hidden spaces, the precise cuts, The careful way the body was disposed of, the cold detachment hinted at a repeat offender. Maybe more than one person was involved. Moving a body over distance sometimes requires more than one hand. And with social media and digital footprints in play, it was impossible to rule out that she'd met someone online that led her straight into a trap. Every profile was a doorway to the chilling unknown. Investigators reconstructed her final hours. Each pause, each intersection, each person she may have trusted or ignored became a line in a growing map of predation. The desert remained patient, silent, indifferent. But investigators knew the faintest shadow, the briefest glance, could hold the story of her last steps. Let's briefly step away from the desert, from those quiet highways, the wind through empty brush, where Emily Pike's story slipped into shadows. Darkness doesn't linger in one place. It moves, it follows, it creeps closer. The evil that vanishes a child into the night isn't the only kind. In 2024, Florida, another name started spreading through the headlines and police reports. Wade Wilson. In mere hours, lives were brutally taken, so sudden, so close to home, that a community was left stunned. Then the story twisted in ways no one anticipated. As it exploded online, attention shifted. The victims faded, while fascination with the killer, his look, his persona, took over. Strangers online began defending him, admiring him. On the next episode, we walk through that case, the timeline, the collisions, the moments ordinary life brushed against pure evil before anyone saw it coming. Because the real terror isn't just what he did, it's how near that darkness can hide right among us. Stay tuned. Make sure to follow on your favorite podcast platform. The trail gets darker from here. The desert's silence is earned, heavy with the weight of the vanished. For Emily Pike, it reflected not only the violence that stole her life, but also the fractures in the system meant to protect her. She was far from home, placed in a group facility under the care of strangers, exposed to dangers both intimate and systemic. Each escape from Sacred Journey was more than rebellion. It was a breadcrumb along a trail of vulnerability. The doors left unlocked, the guards distracted, the reports filed late or ignored. They built a ladder for someone willing to climb. Indigenous girls like Emily faced compounded dangers. Missing and murdered Indigenous people is not a series of isolated cases. It's a chain of vanished voices, lives erased quietly and repeatedly. Jurisdictional conflicts slow investigations. Violence is often invisible to those outside their communities, and in Emily's case, that invisibility almost became final. The Turquoise Alert System, established in Arizona in 2025, was designed to stop these disappearances. Rapid notification for endangered Indigenous people, a safeguard for the future. But it couldn't reach Emily as she walked straight into danger. The failure had already happened. Even small lapses in the group home created openings. Gaps in oversight, inconsistent monitoring, even the tiniest slip could become a path for someone waiting to take advantage. They're patient, they watch, and they move when the moment comes. Every missed warning, every wink link becomes an opportunity for horror. Emily's disappearance and the shadows surrounding it became a catalyst. Her death sparked discussion, reform, legislation, but the truth remains. These systems respond after tragedy, rarely before. The darkness, however, was not without resistance. Family, advocates, tribal authorities, and communities refused to let her story fade. Vigils burned, names were spoken aloud, candles flickered against the night. Each remembrance is defiance. Each act of memory, a light in the shadow. Emily's story illuminates both what was lost and the cracks that allowed it. It reminds us that the darkness is not only in the act itself, but in the gaps around it. Emily Pike. Say her name. Let it hang, heavy, unrelenting. The desert, the streets, the reservation. They didn't forget her. Candles burned in windows. Murmurs of her name threaded through homes, schools, and churches. A shadow stretched far beyond her 14 years. Communities gathered in Mesa under soft light meeting asphalt. In the desert near Globe, on dusty trails where family and advocates left footprints mingled with wind. Each gesture small, yet vast in meaning. We remember. We will not let you fade. Turquoise alert legislation passed. Imperfect, but born of tragedy. And conversations about group home oversight and tribal integration began to surface. Reform crept slowly, like shadows withdrawing at dawn. And yet, even progress couldn't erase the void left behind. Her family carried their grief with a quiet, fierce intensity. Her uncle, Allred Pike, would stand in the desert, speaking to the wind as if it could reach her, or the person who'd taken her. Every visit became a ritual. Every return a stark reminder of a world that'd been cruel to them. Communities turned warning into action. Images became advocacy. Conversations became petitions, legal challenges, outreach to federal agencies. Their voices rose, not only in grief, but in refusal to stay silent. Emily's story became more than a loss. It became a testament to survival and memory, a quiet resistance against forgetting. Threats she faced, glances that went unnoticed, doors and conversations once dismissed as trivial were now gathered like shards of light in the darkness, moments that taught caution. Her story moved through the dark like a soft glow of a single candle, quiet, fragile, but determined enough to push back against the weight pressing in. Amid all the grief, there were pockets of light, laughter that caught everyone by surprise, tears that came freely and without shame, songs sung off-key but filled with feeling, quiet prayers whispered in shadowed corners. People honored her in the smallest ways, holding space, sharing memories, simply showing up. And those moments burned brighter than anyone could have expected against the surrounding darkness. And the question never faded. Who saw her that night? Who followed her? Who knew things the rest of us couldn't or wouldn't see? Those whispers hung in the air, memories tucked away in pockets of silence, waiting for someone brave enough to listen, to speak them out loud. The community held on through it all. They didn't let the silence win. Candles burned steady in parks and along highways. Names carried on the wind during walks and vigils. Red handprints pressed to murals and memorials, as if to say she was still here. Emily Pike, 14, full of life that was cut short, stayed present in every gathering, every prayer, every demand for answers that still hadn't come. Her story refused to sink back into the shadows. It kept flickering, stubborn and real, in the faces of people who showed up month after month, year after year, refusing to forget. Even after months bled into a full year, Emily's disappearance held investigators in a relentless loop, circling dead ends and gathering scraps of what might have happened. Every tip that surfaced, every half-remembered detail, every fragment finally shared formed another thread, thin, easily broken, yet taut enough that a single careful pull could begin to loosen the knot and reveal truth. The desert yielded its first secret. Her remains, dismembered and abandoned in heavy bags along the remote turnoff of Highway 60. But it withheld the answers that mattered most. Who brought her there? How did a girl from Mesa end up so far into isolation? What faint marks, such as scuffs in the earth, stray fibers, a single hair, had the wind, the animals, the relentless sun already erased? Those slivers, visible only to the trained eyes, remained the case's fragile hope. The police retraced her final steps through Mesa's streets, surveillance from gas stations, stores, apartment blocks, every frame dissected for timelines. Hundreds of vehicles streamed past each hour. Every silhouette, every pause, could be a lead or a distraction. Whispers arrived in fragments. A dark truck lingering near intersections night after night. A stranger exchanging words with a lone teen. A vehicle trailing slow and deliberate down quiet roads. Each report carried the chill of something overlooked. Warnings dismissed too easily, yet impossible to ignore entirely. They examined her connections. Emily's history of running from the group home had once seemed routine, but fleeting encounters can turn lethal. Someone she'd met weeks or months earlier might have noted her vulnerability, memorized her patterns, her pain, the path she always fled along. In quieter moments, investigators confronted the question few voiced publicly. Could the relative she'd accused of assault, the name never released, hold a place in this? Someone who stayed near her world even after the allegation, who knew her routines, her fears, her escapes. A presence from her past, unseen yet persistent, who might have waited, watched, and seized the moment. Online traces drew them deeper. Messages that appeared innocuous, social media exchanges, digital footprints across apps. Predators often betray themselves subtly. A request for a ride, a comment that overstays, a tone that shifts imperceptibly. Early markers of intent long before violence erupts. Law enforcement navigated that digital landscape with meticulous caution. One misstep, pressing too hard, alerting a target, mishandling process, could seal off avenues forever, erasing leads already scarce. At the desert site, physical evidence underwent relentless scrutiny. Tire tracks, footprints, fibers, clothing remnants. But the desert forgives nothing. Wind scatters impressions. Time erodes certainty. The longer the wait, the more the truth risks dissolving into dust. Despite the threads, despite the warrant served, the combing, the mapping, no suspect has ever been named publicly. No arrests were made. The silence is deafening. The possibilities multiply, and the questions endure. Consider the predator who exploits the ordinary. A 14-year-old girl, alone after dark, weary and uncertain. Headlights pierce the night. A vehicle slows. A voice offers aid, maybe a ride, a brief mercy. And in that instant, kindness conceals the reversal. The door closes. Power tilts irrevocably. Escape becomes captivity. Then there's a darker version. The hand of someone familiar. A figure who knew her rhythms. The group home, the streets, the vulnerability she carried. Trust, already worn thin, becomes the ideal tool. An old connection, perhaps one she'd named, one she tried to flee. Could it have shadowed her into the night? Could unresolved pain have hardened into deliberate violence? Investigators stared down the possibility of more than one person being involved. It's grim to even say out loud. But look at what it took. Moving her body out into that remote desert stretch, choosing a spot way off the highway, dismembering her, bagging her up, leaving almost nothing behind. That's not amateur hour. It takes planning, know-how, maybe extra hands to pull off without getting caught. Even one accomplice changes everything, turns an impulsive act into something calculated and coordinated. Chilling how clean it stayed. Every tip that comes in, every little piece they dig up, every theory they chase, it all carries this heavy weight. They sit there mapping it out. Who had motive? Who had the chance? Who was close enough to know her patterns? Who showed red flags before? Some paths were dead ends and slammed shut. Others just hang there, open, whispering, like they're waiting for one more memory to surface. One lucky break. One person finally ready to talk. Because until then, those questions don't let go. Because somewhere, someone knows. Someone remembers a fleeting detail. A conversation, a vehicle, a hesitation in an interaction. And until that memory surfaces, the darkness holds sway, keeping answers just out of reach. And perhaps, within that darkness, the shadow of someone Emily had already feared waits, remembered, unseen, a ghost from the past entwined with the mystery of her disappearance. Grief doesn't pause or ask permission. It arrives all at once, and it stays. Emily's uncle, Emily Pike, has spoken about the first endless night she didn't walk through the door. Time stretched thin, every headlight sweeping past the house, every phone buzzing, every knock that wasn't her, felt like a punch to the chest. Sleep became impossible. Eating turned into a rote habit, flavorless and mechanical. Life outside kept moving, but inside, everything stopped. When confirmation came, the remains in the trash bags along the remote highway. It didn't lighten the load, it just pressed harder, turning abstract fear into something concrete and irreversible. Unresolved cases like this trap families in a cruel kind of limbo. The questions circle endlessly. Did someone see her that night? Did someone hear a detail they're still holding back? Did someone act or fail to act in a way that changed everything? Those unknowns don't fade with time. They settle in, becoming part of the quiet moments, the routines that feel wrong without her. A sketchbook left half finished, a favorite jacket still on the hook. Small things like that hit like fresh wounds, pulling the mind right back to the last time she was home. For the San Carlos Apache community, Emily's loss echoes far beyond one family. Native youth already navigate so many vulnerabilities. Underfunded services, group homes that don't always protect, a history where too many stories like hers slip away unnoticed. Emily was more than a headline. She was a daughter who loved drawing, who looked out for her siblings, who had dreams of college. Her uncle has said they woke up a sleeping giant, sparking real calls for change, better oversight, stronger protections, a louder voice in the fight against missing and murdered Indigenous people. Vigils have become a steady ritual. Candles in mesa parks, prayers on the reservation, gatherings with signs that read "Justice for Emily Pike" and "No more MMIW." People who might have stayed silent now speak. Relatives and advocates move forward carefully, but with real fire behind their words, demanding answers, challenging systems, refusing to let her become another forgotten name. Trauma runs deep, constant anxiety, watching every shadow, nightmares that replay the unimaginable. Investigators carry that weight too. It's not just collecting evidence, it's holding space for a family's hope, for a community's resolve. And the family keeps waiting, waiting for that one memory to break through, for a tip that finally matters. Right now, there's still a combined reward of $200,000 on the table for anyone with any information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible. It's a standing offer from multiple sources, including the Navajo Nation Police, the San Carlos Apache Tribe, the FBI, and others, because they know someone out there holds the key. The family holds on to that possibility, even as the days stretch on, because somewhere beyond the desert, beyond the shadows, beyond the silence, the truth still waits. The desert doesn't forget. Emily Pike's story is carved into its dust, carried by the wind, etched into the silence that stretches between the scattered hills. But her story, as painful as it is only one thread in a much larger tapestry of darkness, a darkness that moves quietly, patiently, waiting for the moment to strike again. But it's also proof that love and justice don't give up easily. They keep pushing back, steady and unyielding, against whatever darkness tries to swallow the truth. Thank you for chasing the dark with me. If tonight's episode left you unsettled, let it stay with you. Speak her name, share her story, subscribe to Chasing the Dark. Please leave us a rating and a review so the lives and voices others try to forget aren't lost to silence. I'd like to give a quick shout out and a huge thank you to my Patreon subscribers. Thanks to your support, we're able to keep the darkness alive. Raven tier supporters on Patreon gain early access, bonus interviews with real people sharing their real true crime and paranormal experiences, and deeper explorations into the shadows that surround these crimes. Each listener who speaks the truth is a thread of light in the darkness. Every story preserved is a life remembered. And as the night stretches on, know this: the darkness never sleeps. There's others whose lives were stolen, whose names still demand to be spoken, whose cases hide behind closed doors and quiet streets. Next time on Chasing the Dark, we leave the desert behind, the endless silence, the dust that settles but never forgets, the questions that echo long after the sun sets. Our next episode leads into a shadow far closer, a darkness that doesn't lurk in remote places or forgotten roads. It waits in plain sight, in human hands. Wade Wilson. In Florida, 2024, headlines carried his name, but the violence erupted in 2019. Random, merciless, claiming 2 women in a single day of unrelenting chaos. The motives don't make sense. There weren't any warnings, just sudden brutality crashing into ordinary lives, leaving families scattered, streets haunted, and a community forever changed. The aftermath wasn't just grief. It was a silence that swallowed everything. And yet, even there, the story refuses to stay buried. Because facing the darkness is the only way to understand why it strikes without reason. In the next episode, we follow the trail, the steps, the moments that turned normal into nightmare, the investigators piecing together what no one saw coming, and we confront the chilling truth. Evil doesn't always hide in the wilderness. Sometimes it walks among us, handsome and smiling, until it doesn't. This is Chasing the Dark, and the darkness is already here.